Imagine waking up in a country where recycling bins are overflowing not with trash, but with carefully sorted plastics, metals, glass, and paper, and where this isn't just a small town initiative but a nationwide movement. The United States, a nation of over 330 million people, suddenly manages to recycle 40% more than it currently does. That's not just a small uptick in environmental consciousness. It's a monumental shift in how Americans consume, dispose of, and repurpose materials. To understand the magnitude of this change, we have to look at where the U.S. stands today. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that the national recycling rate hovers around 32%. That's respectable compared to some countries, but far from leading the world. Increasing that rate by 40% means not inching up to 33% or 35%, but instead recycling nearly half of all municipal solid waste generated each year. This is a transformation that would ripple through every sector of the economy, every household, and every environmental system. First, the sheer volume of materials saved from landfills would be staggering. The U.S. generates roughly 292 million tons of municipal solid waste annually. If nearly half of that were recycled instead of landfilled or incinerated, we would be diverting over 140 million additional tons from waste streams. Landfills, already overburdened and expensive to maintain, would see an unprecedented relief. This reduction would extend the lifespan of existing landfill sites, delaying the need to build new ones, a process that is not only costly but also politically contentious. Communities that once fought against new landfill projects would find those battles less frequent, and entire regions might see their environmental health improve as leachate and methane emissions from landfills decrease. The climate implications of this shift would also be enormous. Recycling saves energy, sometimes massive amounts of it. Producing aluminum from recycled cans uses about 95% less energy than producing it from bauxite ore. The same principle applies to steel, paper, and plastics. That energy savings translates directly into fewer greenhouse gas emissions. In a country where the electricity grid is still heavily reliant on fossil fuels, every ton of material recycled is a small but meaningful step toward reducing carbon output. When scaled up by 40% across the entire nation, the emissions savings could rival or even exceed those achieved by some of the most aggressive renewable energy projects. In effect, ramping up recycling could become an underappreciated climate change mitigation tool. Economically, this surge in recycling would reshape industries. The recycling sector itself would need to expand rapidly to handle the new volume of material. That means more collection trucks, more sorting facilities, more advanced processing plants, and more jobs. This could be a boon for both urban centers and rural communities, especially those struggling with manufacturing decline. Recycling is a labor-intensive process, from collection to sorting to processing, and a national increase of 40% could generate tens of thousands of new jobs. Some would be blue-collar, focused on the physical handling of materials, while others would be in research, engineering, and logistics, tasked with designing more efficient systems and improving recycling technology. Manufacturing industries that rely on raw materials would also be affected. A larger and more consistent supply of recycled materials would reduce dependency on virgin resources, some of which are imported and subject to geopolitical risks. Paper mills, for instance, could operate more sustainably with a steadier flow of recycled fiber. Glass manufacturers could cut costs by melting cullet instead of raw silica. Plastic processors could benefit from a more abundant supply of recycled resins, reducing their need for oil-based feedstocks. Over time, this could even help stabilize prices in volatile commodities markets, because recycled material provides a buffer against raw material shortages. However, achieving and sustaining this 40% increase would require massive changes in infrastructure and public behavior. Curbside recycling programs would need to be standardized nationwide to eliminate confusion about what can and cannot be recycled. Today, the patchwork nature of recycling rules across states and municipalities creates inefficiencies and contamination in the waste stream. Contamination, when non-recyclable items are mixed in, can ruin entire batches of material, making them unsuitable for processing. To truly achieve a 40% increase, public education campaigns would have to be rolled out at unprecedented scale, teaching people the correct way to sort their waste. Schools, workplaces, and public spaces would need more recycling bins, clearer signage, and possibly even enforcement measures to ensure compliance. Technological innovation would play a key role. Advanced optical sorters, AI-driven robots, and improved chemical recycling techniques could make it easier to process complex materials that currently end up in landfills. For example, multi-layer plastics, used in chip bags and juice pouches, are notoriously hard to recycle. If breakthroughs in chemical recycling become commercially viable, these materials could finally be recovered and repurposed. Similarly, textiles, which are a growing share of the waste stream, could be recycled at much higher rates with the right infrastructure. This would open new business opportunities in sectors like fashion, construction, and packaging. On the environmental side, reducing landfill usage has benefits beyond cutting methane emissions. Landfills can leach harmful chemicals into groundwater and soil. By diverting waste, especially hazardous materials, these risks decrease. Wildlife and ecosystems could also benefit indirectly. Less waste in landfills means less wind-blown trash ending up in rivers and oceans. Marine animals, which often mistake plastic for food, would have a lower risk of ingestion and entanglement. Cleaner waterways could boost fisheries, tourism, and public health in coastal communities. Yet, there are challenges and unintended consequences to consider. For one, the recycling market is highly dependent on demand for recycled materials. If industries are not willing or able to purchase the increased volume of recycled goods, we could end up with stockpiles of materials with nowhere to go. This has happened before, most notably in 2018 when China stopped accepting most foreign recyclables, leaving U.S. cities scrambling to find new buyers. To prevent a repeat, the U.S. would need to invest in domestic recycling markets, possibly through subsidies, tax incentives, or requirements that certain products contain a minimum percentage of recycled content. There's also the energy cost of recycling itself. While recycling generally saves more energy than it consumes, transportation and processing still require fuel and electricity. If recycling facilities are located far from where materials are collected, the environmental benefits can be partially offset by the emissions from trucking them long distances. Strategically placing new facilities near major population centers could minimize these inefficiencies. Culturally, a shift toward 40% more recycling could signal a broader change in consumer attitudes toward waste. People might become more mindful of what they buy, opting for products with less packaging, or packaging that is easier to recycle. Businesses might respond by redesigning products to be more recyclable from the start, a concept known as design for disassembly. Over time, this could evolve into a circular economy model, where materials are continually reused rather than discarded, fundamentally transforming the relationship between consumption and waste. Politically, such an achievement would likely become a point of national pride and international influence. The U.S., often criticized for its environmental policies, could position itself as a leader in sustainable waste management. This could enhance its credibility in climate negotiations and trade discussions, particularly as other countries grapple with their own waste crises. Domestically, bipartisan support could emerge if the economic benefits, job creation, reduced landfill costs, and energy savings are clearly demonstrated. In the long run, the health impacts could be significant as well. Cleaner environments mean less exposure to pollutants from landfills and incinerators, which are often located near low-income or marginalized communities. Reduced plastic pollution could lower the prevalence of microplastics in food and water, which scientists are increasingly linking to potential health risks. Public health agencies might find themselves spending less on treating pollution-related illnesses, freeing up resources for other priorities. Ultimately, increasing recycling rates by 40% in the U.S. would not just be an environmental win. It would be a social, economic, and political transformation. It would require the cooperation of governments, businesses, and individuals alike. It would demand investment in infrastructure, innovation, and education. And while the challenges are real, the potential benefits, from cleaner air and water to stronger economies and healthier communities, are too great to ignore. In many ways, recycling is one of the few win-win strategies available. It reduces waste, saves energy, creates jobs, and protects the planet for future generations. If this vision were realized, the United States could stand as proof that large, complex societies can make significant environmental progress without sacrificing economic growth. It could inspire similar efforts around the globe, creating a ripple effect that changes how the world thinks about waste. And perhaps decades from now, people would look back at this era as the moment when the throwaway culture began to fade, replaced by a mindset of stewardship, responsibility, and resilience.